So I would say what we've seen recently is kind of the triumph of old technology. So there have been two technologies which educators K through 12, higher education, have found particularly useful. And the first are learning management systems. Any kind of system that allows teachers to consolidate lots of different kinds of learning materials into one place. The first references to learning management systems show up in the scholarly literature in the 60s and 70s. They're built and sort of commercialized and made open source in the 90s and 2000s. So a learning management system. And the second technology is one that in the 1930s would have been called video telephony, which we now call Zoom or other kinds of technologies like that, something that allows people to talk through video face-to-face. Those two technologies have been the primary tools, these sort of like well-established, long researched, long iterated on technologies that have been what has been making remote learning work. There are a range of other technologies that people have used out there. I think one other common set are technologies for mathematics learning, math tutoring, and there are new startups that pop up recently, but another important thing to remember is that we've been building computer programs to teach people math as long as we have been building computer programs. In the 1960s, the University of Illinois had a system called Play-Doh, and some of the when we had computers that was the size of whole rooms, some of the first things that we did with them was ask the question, how can we use these to teach people math? And so to some extent, there are lots of new startups and things like that that are out there, but if you sort of peek under the hood of those startups, a lot of what we're finding is that it's the things that we've been working on for a long time, not necessarily brand new cutting edge kinds of things that are proving most useful.
Okay, so for the platforms that are out there, are they profitable and how are they actually making their money?
So those are answered differently in all kinds of ways. Zoom licenses their technologies to schools, to school universities, and so they charge on a sort of per head basis. There are a number of platforms. Google Classroom is probably the most prominently used, and the Google Suite for Education set of tools that are made available to schools for free in many cases, but basically as some kind of marketing effort, get people familiar with these tools. I mean, that's the same sort of justification for Microsoft licensing projects, but for the most part, most of the technologies that are available through schools are available on a district says we have X thousand students and therefore we'll pay you this many dollars per head as a licensing. I think it's more prominent in other parts of the world, in India and China and other places, that families pay for individual subscriptions to technology services, particularly around tutoring and things like that. So there's some quite large platforms which have, for the most part, not taken off in the United States, where you might go and participate in your school experience during the day, but then you get a whole bunch of supplementary learning, particularly in preparation for kind of gatekeeping exams, college entrance exams, high school graduation exams, those kinds of things, but they're done more individually.
So then as you look around the world, which countries or regions do you think have the most potential for growth when it comes to online learning?
Well, we have never had a case where there are over 1 billion children that have been required to go home during a pandemic. And so to some extent, nearly every country in the world has students who have spent some time trying to figure out, and teachers spend some time trying to figure out how to do remote learning. There are, I think there are potentials for growth and opportunities in all kinds of places, and the nature of the local system will help determine what kinds of opportunities there are for education technology. So in places in which testing, particularly these really high stakes gatekeeping exams, are really important parts of education systems, then there's always going to be a market for people who are looking for tutoring to get better support in preparing people for those exams. In the United States, we have a very decentralized education system. We have 13,000 school districts, 130,000 schools, and they're often preparing students for different things in different kinds of ways. And so rather than having the same kind of emphasis on tutoring services, we have more sort of platforms and tools and technologies that allow individual teachers to customize learning experiences for their students in different kinds of ways.